So, good morning, everyone. My topic for today is all about popular geopolitics. So, to start with, let us identify first what is its objectives. So, first is to discuss the historical developments of popular geopolitics, and next is to explain deeply popular geopolitics, and third is to explain the basic concepts of popular geopolitics. So in this example or picture, we can see that the term geopolitics seems to be useful to journalists because it has a veneer of tremendous explanatory. So say for example the news headline the geopolitics of oil. So by explaining its power, what is driving American foreign policy in the Middle East? So the answer of this is the geopolitics of oil. So it sounds so helpful and so powerful, like it's a key opening a lock, since understanding geopolitics is also or can lead to understanding the world. But what is really geopolitics? So it is a tradition in which a way of thinking that has been highly influential in the 20th century and seemingly one that looks to be key to the current century as well. So it is a tradition that provides the tacit explanation that journalists love to harness. So where did this tradition come from? For today, we will discuss briefly the historical development of popular geopolitics, like when and how it come from up until the 21st century, where popular geopolitics supposed to work. So it is in order. First is the development of geopolitics prior to World War One, then followed by the interwar period, then the emergence of critical geopolitics into the 21st century and beyond. So this narrative in the development of geopolitics prior to World War One starts with Friedrich Ratzel when he introduced his organic theory of the state, wherein the populations draw strength from territory, and expansion of the state is a sign of a strength. So in order to become a powerful nation, you need to grow in order to thrive. So Ratzel felt a powerful urge to expand the borders of their state so it could sustain the vigor of its people. And then followed by Rudolf, the father of imperial geopolitics, wherein he coined the term geopolitics as a state and a society that should be viewed synergistically or cooperatively working together. So, according to Rudolf, the living space taken by a strong culture from a weaker ones in Nazi geopolitics, or what we called his Lebensraum. And next is Hans classical geopolitics argued that the control of the sea and protecting their own commerce was pivotal to victory in battle. And then, followed by Macinder's expansion of railroad network was fundamentally reworking the political geography. So it is a land-based power. Moving on in the second phase of the historical development of popular geopolitics is the interwar period. So geopolitics circumscribes in the entire world. So from Karl Hascheffer in his Geopolitics, it is a mixture of observation and hazy theories with an inseparable connection between geopolitics and Nazism. So during World War II, Hascheffer's propaganda value far exceeded his policy influence. So Hascheffer's Geopolitics, based on the works of the four persons that I have mentioned above. So he compared the state as a biological organism of the German geographer Ratzel, and also the less scientific theories of Rudolf. He also compared the perceived sea power as increasingly dominant aspect of the world politics of Mahan, and considered the theory of Mackinder as a disciple of Hartland since he is a soldier. Next is the emergence of geopolitics. So let's move on to the third phase of the historical development of popular geopolitics, which is the emergence of critical geopolitics. So I will not dig deeper as to how critical geopolitics emerged, since it has been reported by a previous reporter, but I will only explain as to how critical geopolitics or why is critical geopolitics relevant in studying popular geopolitics. So like that. The reincarnation of objective geopolitics was quickly joined by a radical refiguring of geopolitics led by the French geographer Yves Lacoste. So Lacoste, from being more integrated with the Anglophone geopolitics community, his interventions make a turning point in the way geopolitics was conceived in the Anglophone world. So in the late 1980s, the Anglophone political geography community belatedly began to incorporate intellectual currents that were already existent elsewhere in the social sciences. So these currents were collectively known as the post-structuralism. So they downplay the role of economic life and on political structures in social life. So generally, they advocated the importance of language and culture alongside the economic and political structures in understanding social outcomes. So followed by this critical geopolitics is the intellectual movement dedicated to questioning the geographic assumptions of global politics. Now, we must take note that those actively incorporating post-structuralism into geopolitics, they refashion the subdiscipline as something more contemporary and dynamic than the static geopolitics of the past. Hence, their project, dubbed as the critical geopolitics, focused on discourse. So, critical geopolitics concerned themselves with discourse. So, now what is this discourse? So, discourse refers to the term in the way in which we talk about things and the way of talking and thinking about the subject that frames discussions. So say for example, in a geopolitical discourse, in an often used phrase, Middle East, di ba, we come up with an idea nga, dito ang Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Iraq. So, this term upon consideration is meaningless without a center point, again, which is the Middle East. So, the Middle East is being measured. So, with this, it lends a new meaning as increasingly geography is about studying in the ways in which we inscribe meaning into places. So, literally dividing the world up into spaces with which we associate values. So that is discourse. So muna siya example sa discourse in a geopolitical setting. So next is the role of cultural authority and the media. So geopolitics changed over 20th century and the role of cultural and the media is important in the way we think or talk about things or what we call this discourse. So related to this idea of the national interest is the question of cultural power. So which is key to being able to convince others that your idea of the national interest is what their idea of the national interest should be. So one of the ways in which critical geopolitics has been very successful is by focusing on how power and discourse circulate and reinforce each other. So for today's politicians, the significance comes from their access to experts, intelligence agents, and the like. So nagid maka-advantage makatake advantage good ang mga politicians ani say for example. In either case, the assumption of greater understanding that comes with these positions masked with the potential abuse of the position to frame geopolitical knowledge in ways that are beneficial to those doing the framing. So say for example, or a good example is the expanded view of geopolitics that would be the attention paid to media in critical geopolitics. So like atong Reader's Digest, katong author sa Reader's Digest, taking katong authors sa Reader's Digest, they take tougher stance on the Soviet Union than the contemporary political administration. So the publishers of the Reader's Digest exercise their cultural power in an effort to shape the overarching discourse of the day. So, di ba, if they nag-take silang stand and their stand creates media savvy or kanang ka-influence ang less cultural power. So the author was red-baited or suspected as communist. So di ba nag-take lang sila sa ilang stand, gilabel na din sila nga communist kay lahira ilang stand sa unsay naa sa ilang country. So, as it was, Readers Digest simply reinforced discourses of anti-communism that were circulating in the highest levels of the US. So, So tracing these connections is the key to understanding how the anti-communism that was seen as being in national interest became known as such. Critical geopolitics have identified three different types of geopolitical discourse. So first is the formal, second is the practical, and then our topic, which is the popular geopolitics. So, starting with the formal geopolitics, this is a geopolitical discourse produced by academics either in university setting or in more overtly political think tanks. So, this think tanks means is an institution that is funded to conduct research to advance the policy goals of its supporters. So, it is an organization dedicated to policy analysis. So, say for example, in the formal geopolitics, Bush's second Secretary of the State, Condoleezza Rice, was a professor of political science at Stanford University who initially gained the ear of the Reagan administration and subsequently the George Bush administration. So serving as an expert on the Soviet Union after being Secretary of the State, she went back teaching political science. So from this example, we can see that formal geopolitical discourse is generally formulated to feed into government decision making. So that's what makes formal geopolitics. And so next type of geopolitical discourse is this practical geopolitics. So number 2 ni siya na mali kog butang. So practical geopolitics may seem to be the most important form of geopolitical discourse. So it is certainly the business end of geopolitics, as the words of politicians can unleash the death and destruction on the sub-objects of their discourse. A classic example of practical geopolitical rhetoric would be in the farewell address of President George Washington. So, in his farewell address, he wrote that the great rule of conduct for us in regard to foreign nations is in extending our commercial relations to have them with little political connection as possible. So, our detached and distant situation invites and enable us to pursue a different course. So Washington argued that the geographic location of the United States across Atlantic from the ongoing wars between United Kingdom and France provided the infant country with a buffer that ought to shape its foreign policy. So indeed, Washington principle that the United States oath not to enter any permanent alliances was followed until a World War II, when the United States began building up a network of regional alliances around the world. So next is this popular geopolitics, which is a type of geopolitical discourse which will be explained thoroughly by me. So popular geopolitics. So it's concerned mostly with geopolitical representation, shifting discourses, constructed identities, and power relations. So the overarching theme of popular geopolitics has been a challenging recognition of geopolitics as an everyday discursive material or practice that occurs outside of practical and as well as formal geopolitics. So popular geopolitics involves the study of the media in virtually all of its forms, wherein we use the word so often just referring to the news media that we often forget the root meaning of it. So media are avenues through which information is mediated to us. So the focus of popular geopolitics on the media includes the news media like newspapers, TV, journalism, and etc. So and the most important for this is the book popular culture such as comics book, television shows, novels, movies, music, and the internet. So thus, the media plays a major role not only how we see the world, but also how we make sense of it. So the media even colonize our personal experiences. So it is almost impossible to go somewhere without preconceived notions of what we look or what to look and how to feel about it. So popular geopolitics inextricably downplay wider contextualization and oftentimes political enfrainment and narratives in trickling down from influential decision makers and those powerful enough to bend geopolitical reality to their will through dissemination of hegemonic ideas. So we must remember that in relation to popular geopolitics, it is through popular culture that we decide who we are, who we want to be, and how we want people to understand us. Hence, popular culture and geopolitics are intertwined in this field of popular geopolitics. Say, for example, rarely do critics say that orchestral audiences are smaller and aging rapidly because the voice is better. Equally, you rarely do hear that Hollywood films do better than art house foreign cinema because they are superior. Diba? So, mo na ta nga mas tsada ang The Voice kaysa sa kanang orchestra audiences because mas kay gamay ang kanang orchestra and mas tsada ang Hollywood films kaysa sa art house foreign cinema kay mas daghan tali og nagtan-aw ana depende sa tungkuan. So diba atong matubag is that they just don't get good culture. So with that is the example of popular culture. So ano siya yung example sa popular culture? So how do we move forward from this understanding to theorize the relationship between popular culture and geopolitics? So to answer this following question, we must then go back to the collective intellectual current, which is the post-structuralism. So it has emerged and become entrenched in the academia under the term cultural studies. So it is an academic movement begun in the Birmingham, UK that seeks to connect with the issues of cultural agency and power. So it is a new thinking rather than viewing popular culture as a degraded or deviant. So they saw it as just another part of the multitude of ways in which people come to share and meaning in their lives. So we mean that the consumption of similar elements of popular culture provides a cultural framework for seeing and interpreting and ultimately finding meaning in the world. So culture, it is argued that it is not as much set of things such like novels, paintings, TV programs, or comics as a process, but is also a set of practices. So primarily, culture is concerned with the production of exchange of meanings, so the giving and taking of meanings between members of society or group. Thus, culture depends on its participants interpreting meaningfully what is around them and making sense of the world. So, in broadly similar ways, thus popular culture can be something good or either bad. So it can be something essential by providing social cohesion and common understanding. So that is culture. So next is the perspective that has been highly influential in cultural studies. So there are three, and so we will start in the material culture. So this material culture is the relationship between material objects and cultural and social relations. Our engagement with popular culture are mediated and constructed in large part by our relationship with objects. So say for example, the common thing we do every day, like using our smartphones. So it is commonly we see that kanang permedyo ta gagamit og iPhone, gagamit og cellphone. So allowing some to claim that such devices have become extensions of ourselves. So atong cellphone, diba, this is our source of information, communication, and interaction. And so this object has given us new capacities to communicate, but also to engage with forms of media and popular culture on the move. So we can see how material objects are important in understanding the ways of popular geopolitics is encountered in everyday life. So we can see how material objects are important in understanding in the ways popular geopolitics are encountered in our everyday life. So next is the Lacan psychoanalysis. So this identity holds out potential for making inroads in the field of geopolitics where, as we have seen, identity is key to the construction of geopolitical discourses. So this psychoanalytic concept that describes the movement of identity formation is the ability to recognize ourselves in the mirror is the key to the formation of the subject identities, but it does not have literally to be a mirror. So the mirror can be other people or crucially the study of popular culture and also characters in movies. So Lacan is popular in the field of film. So say for example, Lacan is popular in film studies because of his cinematic screen. So this cinematic screen metaphorically serve as the mirror and also these dim lights. Diba? So if nana siya and magtanot na we caught up in the emotion, like kita ang nasa dito nga place kana ma-feel nato ang moment binana. So there is a connection to the movie, so that is what we call the Lacan and psychoanalysis. So muna siya, that is the example of the Lacan and psychoanalysis. So next is the convergence culture. So it is one aspect of this convergent culture is the acknowledgement of the ways media and popular culture can be across multiple platforms. So convergent culture also paves the way for transmedia storytelling, in which elements of popular culture narrative are dispersed across a range of many media platforms and formats. So say for example, Pokemon, di ba? Na ay salida sa Pokemon, na ay kanang comic book sa Pokemon, na ay kanang film series sa Pokemon, napay kanang dulaan sa Pokemon, kanang trial card, mga cards sa Pokemon, also toys. So these multiple forms allowing the audiences to immerse themselves and generate meaning with the fictional universe of Pokemon. And so the third objective, which is the basic concept of popular geopolitics, which is composed of imagined communities, geopolitical imaginations, banal nationalism, and intertextuality of popular culture and geopolitics. So first is the imagined community, wherein imagined communities, because they are different from regular communities, in fact, they're not based on face-to-face contact. So societies brought into existence by the use of common literature and media. And this imagined communities is crucial for popular geopolitics, since it created an avenue through which consumers of popular geopolitics texts and culture could gain common understanding of what was going on in life and of this community and this new nation. So first, we'll start in the imagined community and the basic concept of popular geopolitics. So imagined community is because they are different from regular communities in that they are not based on face-to-face contact, because society is brought into existence by the use of common literature and media. So imagined community is crucial for popular geopolitics, since it created an avenue through which consumers of popular text and culture could gain common understanding of what was going on in life and that of this community and this new nation. So say for example, pag apil ni Catriona Gray og Miss Universe, di ba pagkadaog niya mura pug kita ang nakadaog, like ina na nga feeling. So that is what we call imagined community. Like biskan dili kita ang rampa didto, but we're very much proud of her. Like kita jud ang kanang murag nangusog, like ina na. So muna siyang imagined community. Next is the geopolitical imagination. So imagine geographies are collections of facts and stereotypes about places in the world that together compose an individual's or a group's worldview. So a person's or society's constellation of taken for granted truths about the world and the way in which power should be utilized in that world. So it is a phrase that heightens the powers and danger that is mediated along with these discourses. For example, in the geopolitical imagination is the stereotype of Canada, diba? Canada is being perceived as cheerful, polite, and friendly country. And in the 2018, President Trump initiated a trade war against his allies in favor of the United States. And one of this is Canada, diba? Canada is being perceived nga good qualities being perceived sa Canada. And so President Trump was mocked because why he considered Canada as a national as a threat. In fact, closest ally man siya sa US. So then President Trump answered that in the War of 1812 you burned the White House. So like inana. So gihimo ni President Trump President Trump initiated trade war in order to secure its national security, and nganong gina-considered man nga threat ni Trump ang Canada ato. So muna siya yung gi-answer because of its history nga as a War of 1812 nga ang Canada daw kay giburn niya ang White House. So with this, Trump's attempt of enacting a particular geopolitical discourse around Canada crashed into a deeply set of popular understanding of Canada and could not take roots as a discursive fact. So muna siyang reality. So the third concept of popular geopolitics is banal nationalism. So it is an everyday ways in which citizens are reminded of their national affiliation. So it is a reservoir that can be drawn in times of crisis. Billig's concept of nationalism refers to the way in which nationalism is perpetuated. So say for example, if you see a crowd in a television, nagrally sila and they nagdala silang flag. So diba you can recognize them as nationalism. And not just also holding a flag or like express a flag, but like for example, another example, like you enter or you join Olympics, diba? It is when citizens are encouraged to think themselves using national categories. So diba you represent the country. So that is banal nationalism. And then lastly is the intertextuality of popular culture and geopolitics. So it is the enmeshing of ideas and texts in which authors borrow from or refer to other texts to create a totality that is referred to in academic thought as the literature. So that is the end. Thank you for listening and God bless.
So good day everyone. Today I will now continue the discussion on popular geopolitics. In this presentation I will discuss the examples of popular geopolitics. So we've known in the previous discussion that the study of popular geopolitics involves the study of media in all its various forms. So any formal or practical geopolitical discourse needs to be broadly disseminated in order for it to para mahimong popular geopolitical discourse. Therefore, in order to gain a deeper understanding of the popular geopolitics, we will now explore how geopolitics is mediated into the popular culture. Among the topics that we will discuss are the cinema, comics, sports, radio, media, cyber balkanization, and artificial intelligence. So first, we will now discuss the topic of cinema. So in recent years, film or cinema has been a major genre within which the imaginaries involved in mapping the geopolitical landscape have been represented and reflected upon. So the first movie that we will analyze is the movie James Bond. In this, we will see the representation of the United Kingdom as a global power. So in order for James Bond to represent the United Kingdom as a global power, kinahanglan niya i-project ka nga power around the world. Chapman described it as follows. One of the ideological functions of the Bond narrative is to construct an imaginary world in which Pax Britannica still operates. Thus, Britain is presented as being in the front line of the conspiracies directed against Western civilizations. So, often ma-observe po nato sa mga Bond movies that si James Bond kauban niya permi ang American agents. However, in these scenarios, makita nato nga Bond is the one who is smarter, smoother, and more critical sa successful resolution of the crisis. Thus, makita nato the special relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom is represented as being reciprocal. Kay ang Britain makuha ni ang money o ang brute force sa United States nga ma-offer o ang United States makuha ni ang British intelligence, subtlety, and the panache of the British. Comics. So comic book is also a medium through which national identity and geopolitical scripts are narrated. So the example that we will look upon is Captain America, which presents the US foreign policy as being defensive and not offensive. So according to Dittmer, he argues that comics are important to geopolitics as they appeal to young audience exactly kung asa ga-start pa lang ilahang socio-spatial frameworks. He also argued that Captain America present US foreign policy as being defensive and not offensive. So, to make this case, Yangi focus ang weapon ni Captain America which is a shield, which is unusual na kayo sa American comic characters nga most halusa sa ila kanay dramatic o offensive nga mga weapon. Sports. The Olympic idea in the modern era is symbolic of a world war. one that does not openly reveal its military ambitions, but which provides to those who know how to read sports statistics a good appreciation of the hierarchy of nations. So this quote is an excerpt from 1913 German sports newspaper. So mabasa nato that Olympism was very integrated na good into the international relations game. So whether fascist regimes or democracies, states understood very quickly na they could use sports or utilize sports, symbolizing it a battle between athletes representing nations. So an athlete's or team's victory become the country's victory. And the World Cup tournament is a great example to think about geopolitics in a more lived and embodied way. So one way to think about the World Cup is as a form of popular geopolitics is to think about the players. So, di ba ilang bodies, they wear jerseys, they're decorated by national symbols. So ginabutan na flag ilang jerseys o kung usa pod ang colors lang jersey is most of the time mo pod ang colors sa ilang flag. So their successes and failures map onto the nation itself. There is a great deal of pressure good to represent the nation well both in sportsmanship and in actual performance sa World Cup tournament. So one salient example of the game's ability good to directly impact the global politics is the armed conflict na hitabo between Honduras and El Salvador in 1969, the so-called Soccer War. In fact, author Eduardo Galeano sums up the tension that spilled over the matches into greater society. Ana siya, soccer, metaphor for war, at times turns into real war. So, soccer war is thus a bloody reminder nga ang implication sa sport can reach far beyond the field. Radio. So, radio is a central technology in both the production and maintenance of the modern world. Kay ang radio broadcast provides a real-time information and some radio ganit naga-broadcast pa 24 hours a day and can provide the most recent updates to listeners. Radio has the ability to reach across borders and can become a valuable source of information where reliable news is scarce. One example that we will look at is the Radio Farda. Radio Farda is the Iranian branch of the US government-funded Radio Free Europe or Radio Liberty, external broadcast service for providing factual, objective, and professional journalism to its audiences. The stated aim of the programming kay not only to promote more positive vision of the United States but also to promote the struggle for freedom and self-determination in Iran. So this is an example how radio can be used as a means to disseminate and spread any ideological and political interests of nations around the world. Media. Media should not be regarded as separate from geopolitical conflicts. In fact, they are a part of it. The newspaper report, the television broadcasts, and the internet podcasts help determine asa nga people, unsa nga places, and events are judged to be newsworthy. So kana nga mga choices then influence ang viewers' responses. The geopolitical power of the media dili siya nakadepend sa ihang broadcasting itself but also in the manner in which events, people, and places are framed. The latter is a term used in media studies to describe how journalists and media organizations organize and present the news, which in turn maka-influence sa audience interpretation of those events and issues. Television broadcasters are important source of framing, and in particular if kana siya kay na reputation for international coverage or dako siya audience nga makaver such as CNN or BBC. But another organization is the Qatari-based Al Jazeera news channel. The most important legacy na nahatag sa Al Jazeera in regards to geographical framing is the manner in which Osama bin Laden has used Al Jazeera as a favored medium to broadcast his messages to the wider world. So kaning mga broadcasts sa Al Jazeera are held responsible for inflaming anti-American and anti-Israeli sentiment in the region. So this is an example where the news media is used to promote, again, an ideology and political interest to the wider groups of people. Internet. Since the 1980s, the growth and development of the Internet has been widely championed as encouraging further social interaction, and shrinking geographical distance. So the powerful search engines such as Google allow mga user to access or download images and stories in a mere seconds na mga positive o negative consequences. This example of the internet clearly allowed all kinds of activity to flourish, including global terror networks and neo-Nazi groupings. Al-Qaeda, ang terrorist group, gamit nila ang internet to generate funding. Nag-send sila encoded messages sa mga members o publicize mga videos sa speeches sa ilang leader. So, much sa frustration sa national governments, kaya ang internet magud kay lisod kay siya ipulis og ipatrol. Kaya ang website, kung i-shutdown mo siya, it can re-emerge shortly afterwards with the different domain address. Cyber balkanization. Cyber balkanization comes from the word balkanization, a geopolitical term for a disorderly or unpredictable fragmentation or sub-fragmentation of a larger region or state into smaller regions or states which may be hostile or uncooperative with one another. In regards to cyber balkanization, it is the segregation of the internet into smaller groups with similar interests. So basically, more siya tribalism, but in the realm of the internet. So while the internet contributed to globalization and information exchange, it also may be used to foster discrimination and divide. In fact, countries such as China have erected what is termed a Great Firewall for political reasons, and Russia has enacted the sovereign internet law that allows it to partition itself from the rest of the internet, while the other nations such as the US and Australia discuss plans to create a similar firewall to block child pornography and weapon making instructions. So basically, ilan lang separate ilang self from the rest of the internet. Ilang gi-exclusivize lang mga content and promotes privacy. In fact, a survey conducted in 2007 by a number of large universities including Harvard found that Iran, China, and Saudi Arabia filter a wide range of topic, and South Korea also filters and censors news agencies belonging to North Korea. So katong study, they found out that numerous countries engage in substantial politically motivated filtering. Artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is the future. Whoever becomes the leader in this sphere will become the ruler of the world, declared Vladimir Putin, speaking before a group of Russian students and journalists in September 2017. In this example, we will look at artificial intelligence. Kaya ang rapid progress sa AI makes it a powerful tool from economic, political, and military standpoints. Embedded man gud sa digital revolution, AI will help determine the international order for decades to come, accentuating and accelerating the dynamics of an old cycle in which technology and power reinforce one another. It will transform certain axioms of geopolitics through new relations between territories, space-time dimensions, and immateriality. National actors around the world kay increasingly aware na sila sa strategic, economic, and military stakes of the development of AI. The American and Chinese digital empires will probably dominate the international geopolitics in the years to come. Kaya sila magud ang frontliner sa AI technology. So in this example, makita gid nato that nations are competing for the development of AI in their respective country. Kay kani gid ang magdetermine whether they will become a superpower in the decades to come or dili na ba. So in conclusion, this chapter has shown how popular geopolitics can be studied with reference sa media, and clearly could be extended to consider in greater detail others such as radio or internet. While established media forms such as newspapers, television, and radio remain highly significant in producing and circulating news about the world, it is new media forms such as the internet, the associated practices such as the cyber balkanization and AI that will command increasing attention from those interested in popular geopolitics. The nightly news, the monthly comic book, the summertime blockbuster action film, these are all episodes of the national life that binds together a variety of people without much in common except for their popular culture. Popular culture provides a vast array of resources for people. to discuss and debate their collective identity. So in so many ways, popular culture and popular geopolitics are so constitutive. So this is Popular Geopolitics. Thank you all for listening.